I'm a 28-year-old female in South Carolina. This man, my mom's ex-boyfriend, has been an unwelcome intrusion in our lives for 30 years, and frankly, I have a feeling that it's not going to end anytime soon. Short of taking measures that are too extreme to even consider, my family and I don't seem to have any choice other than to put up with it. We can't ignore it, because just when we think it's over, he pops back up. We run into him in town. Someone mentions his name, or an event will trigger a memory, and we're right back at that hopeless, frustrating feeling of powerlessness. I can't recount every single step that's brought my family to this point. It would just take too long, but I can relate the major events that have happened. Even without every detail, this is still going to be pretty long. I guess I should start at the beginning. To make a very long story short, my mom met this guy in high school. His name was Rick. Rick and my mom dated for 4 years, starting at the end of their senior year. He was the son of a local politician, very good-looking and athletic. I've talked with her at length about her time with him, and she's told me that while they were initially together, there wasn't anything she saw that would indicate something was off about him. Slowly, though, over the course of their relationship, he changed. He started telling her what she could wear, who she could talk to. He told her she couldn't smoke anymore, that she had to get a new car because he couldn't be seen with her in the old truck that she drove, and that she needed to move out of her parents' house and marry him as soon as possible. He was also pushing hard for her to sleep with him. She didn't, and she's never been able to say, at least to me, why that was, other than a feeling that she shouldn't. For the most part, my mom ignored the way he was trying to control her life. She didn't do any of the things he wanted her to do. She's stubborn and very no-nonsense, so it floors me that she put up with this crap for so long. But she didn't feel like she could do any better, and she thought that, given time, she could change him. Rick didn't change. At least, not for the better. If anything, he got even worse. He became verbally abusive and put her down every chance he got. Eventually, she broke up with him. She'd found out that he was sleeping with a friend of hers, among several women. Over the course of the year they were no longer together, Rick was constantly trying to get back with her. He'd call her at work and at home. He'd drive by where she was working for her second job, or follow her when she drove somewhere other than work or home. He tried to get her friends to tell him where she was too, or to give her messages from him. He even had his mother stop her in the grocery store and plead with her to get back with him. She told my mom that even though she was from lower-class trash, her son was devastated without my mom in his life. While this was happening, my mom met my dad, and then Rick found out about it, and he seemed to back off a little. My dad's a big guy, and comes from a rough family with a reputation for fighting. I guess that made him hesitant to keep up his behavior. For a little while, anyway. That all changed when my parents got married. My mom would pick up the phone when it rang, and hear heavy breathing on the line. A man's voice that was clearly disguised would try to ask her questions about her marriage, or say something lewd about her, or the intimate aspect of my parents' relationship. I say try because as soon as she heard the voice, she'd hang up, although she wasn't always quick enough. Back then, there were no stalker laws, and since there wasn't any kind of physical assault, there wasn't much the police could do. Not that they would have anyway. We're from a small town, population hardly more than about 5,000, and the sheriff was a real good friend with Rick's father. Suffice to say, The legal avenue was closed to my family. My grandmothers, tired of the harassment of their children, got together at one point and cornered Rick's mom in town one afternoon. They told her point blank that if she couldn't get a handle on her son and his behavior, they were going to make sure the newspapers found out what other recreational activities he'd been up to, which, as you could probably guess, weren't legal. Again, the cause stopped. Then, my sister and I were born, and all hell broke loose. Rumors started flying around town that Rick was actually our father, and that my mom had been having an affair with him. Pictures of my mom with us at the store or somewhere in town would turn up at the mailbox, along with letters stating how much we looked like Rick, or even more creepily, they would say how much we looked like our mom, and how very attractive we were going to be when we grew up. When my mom showed that particular letter to my dad, he was livid. That night, he drove out to the dive bar where Rick and his friends were known to hang out. Rick wasn't there, but about 3 of his buddies were. My dad demanded that they tell him where Rick was, but they wouldn't. When my dad turned back to get in his truck, intending to keep looking for the bastard, the men ganged up on him. Like I said before, my dad's a big dude, and he grew up fighting. He handed their asses to them, broke 2 noses, and the other one lost his front teeth. When it was over, he told them to let Rick know that he'd find him if anything else happened. Several years went by very quietly. We worked, and we made a life as a close-knit family. But when we were around 16 and 15, things started to pick up again. Rick had, by this point, started and failed several businesses, gotten married twice, and had children of his own. With mouths to feed, he'd taken a job as a manager at the local grocery store. I was driving age at this point, and it wasn't uncommon for my mom to send my sister and I to the store while she worked. We always enjoyed this because it gave us a chance to play our too loud music and talk out of our mom's earshot about things she really wouldn't have wanted to hear. You know, typical teen girls. The first time we went in, and Rick was working there, he saw us and easily recognized us. I look more like my mom than my sister does, pretty much a carbon copy, whereas she's the splitting image of my dad. Plus, small town. It wasn't hard for him to figure out who we were. And when he did, he followed us through the whole store. Every time we turned down an aisle, he'd be there, with the creepiest smile on his face. We had no idea who he was. We were practically babies when the pictures and letters had been put in our mailbox, and as children, it was a topic that our parents had rightfully not talked about in front of us. It wasn't until we were in our late teens that we were told the whole truth. Rick stopped us at the end of every aisle and would ask us questions. He asked us if we knew our mom's birthday, if we liked the same things she did, if we liked our dad. He told us how pretty we looked and how much we resembled her. We tried to brush most of it off. We were used to being recognized by people in town that knew our parents and grandparents. Most of the time, they'd just say something like, "Hey, I knew your mom," and never introduce themselves beyond that, so it didn't strike us as weird. It was the shower of compliments about our looks and figures that made us uncomfortable. We rushed through the store as fast as we could to get away from him and back home. We didn't say anything to our parents. Both of them are overprotective, and we didn't want to stir up trouble. Stupid idea, I know. Boy, do I know, because this became a weekly ritual for almost a year. Every week, we'd be sent to the store for groceries, and Rick would be there following us around. No one said anything, even though the cashiers would look at him funny as he stood in the checkout line with us, staring at us and talking non-stop. It got to the point where we would be in tears when we got outside again, but there wasn't a word said. Maybe the other people in the store thought they'd get punished. Maybe they were afraid of him. I don't know. but when we finally did tell our parents, they were furious. Not so much with us, but over what had happened to us. We stopped going to that store and started shopping at the Walmart in the next town over. My granddad met with the store owner and Rick lost his job. Again, things were quiet for a few years. Occasionally, we'd see him in town, and when we did, we avoided him as best we could. Sometimes he'd sneak up on us and try to talk to us. Raised in the southern United States tradition of manners, we couldn't just ignore him without feeling like we were committing a sin, so we made it as brief as possible. The compliments still came, weird and entirely unwelcome, but neither of us knew how to handle them other than to say thank you and leave quickly. Time went on, and we went to the college pretty far off, where there wasn't a chance of running into him. But he was still a presence. When Facebook came out, he was there, trying to friend us, sending us messages to ask how our mom was doing, and how we liked school. We both blocked him, but he somehow tracked down our email addresses. It wouldn't have been hard for him to get them. He just had to ask the right people, and we'd never thought about having to guard that information. Both of us got bombarded with emails from Rick, asking us the same questions again about our parents, and talking about how much he looked forward to seeing us at home. The worst one was a message he sent to me, asking me to let my mom know that all she had to do was tell him she was leaving my dad, and he'd divorce his current wife, leave his kids, and marry her, and that he would be the dad my sister and I needed in our lives. I blocked him immediately, and called my sister to let her know she could be on the lookout. My mom doesn't have an email address, so he couldn't harass her like that, but the heavy-breathing phone calls came back for a while. Then we all got cell phones, and we haven't given the numbers to anyone except immediate family, or people we can trust implicitly to not relay them to him. Which brings me to the most recent event, and the reason I decided to sit down and write this out. I've just moved back to my hometown, fresh out of grad school and newly married. Things have been quiet for a long time. Rick was the furthest thing from my mind. My husband and I had stopped by Walmart to pick up last-minute gifts for Christmas. We'd split up, and I was just coming out of the restroom. My brain was focused on working my phone, trying to call my husband so I could find him in the supermarket labyrinth, when I felt a tap on my shoulder. Distracted, I turned around, and almost dropped my phone when I realized I was standing face to face with that son of a bitch. Rick grinned at me and said, "Hello." I'm ashamed to say I couldn't do more than stare at him. He'd snuck up on me, and I was so startled and freaked out that I couldn't say a word. And then, he leaned in with that damn smile on his face, the one he used to wear when he'd follow my sister and me, and he goes, "You look just like your mom. If I was your dad, though, you'd look more like me." I was frozen as he grinned at me for what was probably only a few seconds, but it felt much, much longer. Then I turned on my heel and walked away. As calmly as I could, I put my phone to my ear and called my husband. It took everything I had to not burst into tears right there in the middle of the store. My husband knows the stories, and he was ready to beat the crap out of Rick for saying anything to me, but I ushered him out to our car. I just wanted to go home. So we did, without buying anything that day. I had told my parents, and they were angry too. They still are. It seems like no matter how much time passes, Rick's still hanging around like the boogeyman. It's not over. And I know that. It might not ever be. But it feels good to get this all out. I don't know what to make of his little declaration, but it makes me sick to my stomach to think too much about it. Or what else, other than the obvious, he might have been implying. What I do know is that I'm so very, very grateful that he isn't my dad, because I can't imagine what my life would have been like then. I'm writing this because of a particular person that gives me anxiety and flashbacks to one of the most horrific nights of my life. She, to this very day, tries to contact me on every type of social media and doesn't get the hint that I don't want her in my life. This person is my dad's ex-girlfriend. I'll call her Jessica for the rest of this story. Some background on her. She apparently was a friend of my dad's in high school and rekindled some sort of relationship between them. My parents are divorced, and at the time of this story, I wasn't allowed to contact my own mother for legal reasons, so I was in my father's care. My dad is very emotionally abusive, and we never talked, or so much did anything but scream and fight at each other. He wasn't Father of the Year, and would leave me at home for hours at a time. He also did this to his girlfriend, Jessica. Jessica wasn't the sweetest person either. She had this attitude about her that screamed, "I'm better than you," and that she was the hottest woman in the world, even though she looked pretty plain. She would constantly start drama with the other housewives in the neighborhood and gossip about them. Some days she was a nice person, but others, she was just as loathsome as my father. She and my dad would constantly fight over the way the other treated them. I didn't pay much attention to it, but it would all eventually come to a boil. It was the week of my 16th birthday. My father was in California to deliver some person's horses for a horse show, so he couldn't be there. So I was left with Jessica, the dogs, and my bird. On Friday, the day he would be coming back, I was fiddling with one of the presents, and it was becoming late into the night. I was in my bedroom passing the time, until I heard rustling noises coming from my dad's room, and then weird, groaning, screaming noises. I was legitimately worried because those noises were coming from Jessica, and I thought she had gotten hurt. What I didn't know, however, was that she had been drinking. She then started screaming like a fucking banshee, and I was afraid to go near that room. I just called out, "Hey, Jessica, are you all right in there? Do you need anything?" Apparently, that was an invitation for her to come running at me. So here I was, a defenseless girl, facing off against a 50-year-old woman. She started hitting me and trying to scratch me. I managed to grab her wrists and try to get her to tell me why she was doing this. She looked me dead in the face. With a low, cold voice, she growled, "I'm going to fucking kill you." I had enough. I pushed her off of me and raced into my bedroom, locking the door. I didn't realize it at the time that I should have called the cops, but I just prayed for my father to get home soon. Finally, as if God had answered my prayers, I heard my father coming through the door. He must have felt the atmosphere in the air, because he called out, "What the hell is going on?" I came rushing out in tears, telling her that it was Jessica, that she came out like a madman, slapping me and threatening to kill me. I was shaking and terrified. I screamed, "I want her out of this house." I was truly afraid. He just stormed past me and up the stairs to their room. I don't remember much, but I assume she tried to blame it on me, like I was the one that attacked her. All I could remember is that the cops weren't called, and we just went to bed. However, that isn't the end of the story. The next morning, she came into my room as I was watching TV, asking for forgiveness, acting as if we just had a girl spat, rather than her telling me that she wanted to fucking kill me. I told her no, but Dad of course demanded that I forgive her or else. So I did, which would usher in the behavior of her doing terrible things to me, and then acting like nothing happened. Obviously, she and my father broke up and went their separate ways. She tried to keep in touch with me, and I was nice to her out of politeness. It wasn't until I was in my freshman year in college that she would start up again. I did have a Facebook at the time, but never did anything about it because I absolutely hate Facebook, and it was my first few weeks of school, so I was busy and barely checked in. When I did check it, I received a nasty, childish message from her, all because I didn't accept her friend request. She proceeded to tell me that I was just as nasty and immature as my father, that he and I used her as a slave, even though I was her bitching buddy as she complained about my father and all the other women in the neighborhood. Also, what struck a note was, she said that if it wasn't for her, that I wouldn't have been in college. Last I checked, all she did was tell me the school's name, and I myself did the rest. She even called me in the middle of my Drawing 1 class to bitch at me, so I proceeded to email her, telling her to never contact me again, and to never contact my dad again either, that I didn't appreciate her immaturity, and that I was only nice to her because of my father. Other than that, I never wanted anything to do with her. Since that message, for 2 years she tried contacting me on social media, acting as if nothing happened and that we were good friends. Even emailing her again to leave me alone, and she said that I was being crazy. I had since gotten into contact with my biological mother and told her this. She just flipped out and told me that if she contacted me again, she would threaten her with a lawsuit. And then one day, just a few weeks ago, I was on my YouTube and I got a message. I'm not a popular YouTuber, I just use it to watch videos. Lo and behold, it was her. All it said was, "Hello, Lindsay. Nice blue hair." Since my icon at the time was of when I had bright blue hair. I told her off and then called my mother in tears. She was fuming that this woman wouldn't leave me alone and get the hint that I don't want to talk to her. All my mother told me was that she was going to settle this once and for all. Since then, I haven't gotten a message for weeks. But I know my mother didn't do anything illegal. Probably just scared her off. So long, Jessica. I never want you in my life again. What is up, guys? It's Blue Spooky here, as always. I just wanted to thank you all for watching to the end of the video, especially if you made it this far. We just recently passed 2,500 subscribers, which is pretty amazing. I'm working on doing some new sort of series for the channel, so that should be fun. Look forward to that coming out in the next few weeks. Definitely going to start doing some creepypastas here soon too, because I want to try some of those out and see how you guys like those. As always, the links to the social media will be in the description below. If you have any stories that you'd like me to read, or any personal stories that you'd like to send in, please feel free to send me a message at any of those links. If you have any constructive criticism, please feel free to leave it in the comments below. I'm always looking for new ways to improve the channel. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.